She crash-landed in a blizzard, alone, bleeding, and carrying a secret she'd buried for 21 years. He was a war veteran, raising his daughter in a quiet mountain town. Instead of calling the cops, he brought her inside. But she wasn't just lost. She was running from the one thing she couldn't forgive herself for. And that little girl, she asked a question that would change everything. Before we begin, where are you watching from today? Has a moment of kindness ever changed your life? Drop your story in the comments. It might be the next one we tell. Welcome to Grateful Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness are told. Let's uncover what really happened. The wind shifted just after sundown. It came sharp and urgent across the ridgeline, rattling the window panes like someone knocking to be let in. Ryan Carter stood on the back porch, boots planted firm on the wooden boards, watching the sky turn the color of old bruises. In one hand, he held a chipped ceramic mug, steam curling into the cold. The other rested on the railing, fingers drumming a rhythm he didn't realize matched his heartbeat. He didn't need the radio forecast. He'd lived in Willow Creek long enough to read the sky like scripture. Behind him, through the open screen door, came the sound of cardboard being folded. Lily was in the living room, sitting cross-legged on the rug, building an airport out of cereal boxes and tape. 6 years old, curious beyond reason, and the only reason he remembered how to breathe. "Do planes fly in snowstorms?" she asked, not looking up from her project. Ryan turned, a faint smile touching his lips. "Not the smart ones," he said, stepping inside. "Storms like this, best place to be is home." Lily paused, holding a strip of tape between her fingers. "But what if someone doesn't have a home?" she asked, voice softer now. "What if someone's lost?" He didn't answer right away. Something in the way she said it, like she already knew what it felt like, made his chest tighten. Before he could respond, the lights flickered once, then died. Lily gasped. Ryan reached under the side table and pulled out the flashlight he kept there for moments like this. The soft beam stretched across the room, dancing over the fireplace, the bookshelf, and the quilt folded on the couch, the one his late wife sewed before the cancer took her. "It's just the storm," he said calmly, crouching beside his daughter. "We'll light some candles, build a pillow fort, and wait it out like adventurers." But before he could move, a sound cracked across the sky. Not thunder. A low, mechanical howl, followed by a shudder in the earth. Then, silence. Ryan stood frozen. Lily reached for his hand. "Was that thunder?" she whispered. "No," he said, already pulling on his coat. "That wasn't thunder." He grabbed the heavy-duty flashlight from the hallway, the one from his days in the Air Force, and opened the door. The snow had started, blowing sideways in sheets. "Stay inside," he said firmly. "I'll be right back." "Daddy," but the door closed before she could say more. Ryan crossed the field behind the house, boots crunching through the fresh layer of white. The wind howled louder now, like it was warning him to turn around. But he'd known worse storms than this. Storms that didn't leave marks on the land, but left holes in a man's heart. A faint orange glow flickered ahead, near the edge of the pine line. Smoke, rising into the snow-dimmed sky. As he got closer, the shape became clear: a small private plane, mangled and torn, its left wing sheared off completely. The tail had dug a deep scar into the frozen earth. Steam hissed from the twisted engine, but no fire, just the stillness of metal shocked into silence. He approached slowly, calling out, "Hello, anyone inside?" No answer. Then the cockpit door creaked open. A figure slumped forward, one arm dangling. Ryan moved fast, climbing onto the wreckage and reaching into the cold. The pilot was a woman, mid-40s, maybe. Short-cut hair, a flight suit soaked through from snow and blood. She was unconscious, her forehead split just above the brow. He lifted her as gently as he could. She wasn't heavy, but she felt like she'd been carrying too much for too long. "Hey," he murmured. "I've got you." Her eyes fluttered open for just a second. "Where?" "Somewhere safe," he said. Let's get you warm. By the time he reached the porch, Lily had the door wide open, a blanket dragging behind her. Her eyes went wide when she saw the woman in her father's arms. Is she an angel? She whispered. Ryan looked down at the stranger, at the bruises on her cheek, at the exhaustion carved into her bones. No, he said softly, but she did fall from the sky. They laid her on the couch. The fireplace flickered beside her, painting her face in gold and amber. Ryan wrapped another blanket around her shoulders and checked her pulse. Steady, but weak. He saw the name stitched faintly on the edge of her flight suit veil Aerodyne, a name that once graced the cover of aviation magazines. And beneath it, a smaller patch, E. Vale. It clicked. Elena Vale, the face of a company that once ruled the skies. Ryan didn't say a word. He tucked the blanket tighter around her and returned to the kitchen, where Lily was making hot cocoa with far too many marshmallows. We're helping her. Right, she asked. Ryan nodded. Yeah, sweetheart. We are. Because sometimes helping someone meant doing nothing but letting them rest. In the quiet that followed, snow began to pile against the windows. The wind settled into a low hum, like the earth was sighing. And inside that small house, something else softened. Later that night, while Lily slept curled up under the quilt, Elena stirred, her eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the dim room. She tried to sit up but gasped, clutching her shoulder. You might want to take it slow, Ryan said from the armchair by the fire. She blinked at him, wary but not afraid. Where am I, Willow Creek? He replied. Montana. You landed about 100 yards from my backfield. She took a shaky breath. I'm Ryan. That was my daughter, Lily. You're in my living room, technically. She looked around. Wood floors, stone fireplace, books on one shelf, toy airplanes on the other. Her eyes settled on the quilt folded beside her. I remember falling, she whispered. Ryan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Any idea what went wrong? Elena didn't answer, but her hand, still trembling, reached toward her jacket pocket and paused. There, tucked inside, was a folded piece of paper, a map. Faint red circles marked across it airfields, flight paths, quiet corners of forgotten skies. She slipped it back in and looked away. Thank you, she said softly. Ryan just nodded. You're safe here, and for the first time in a long time, she let herself believe it. Outside, the storm howled on, but inside that small mountain house, something fragile had just begun to thaw. By the second morning, the storm had softened into a quiet curtain of snow, the kind that blanketed the world and made everything move just a little slower. Elena stood at the kitchen window, her shoulders stiff but healing, a mug of black coffee warming her hands. Behind her, Lily was humming, hunched over a cluttered coffee table. She was busy taping popsicle sticks into the shape of wings, surrounded by glue, crayons, and cereal box fuselages. Ryan, back from shoveling the walk, shook snow from his jacket and gave Elena a small nod. You like your coffee strong? He said, walking past. I like it honest, she replied, not looking up. Strong. She'd learned. Usually got you where you needed to go faster. He chuckled softly, heading toward Lily to adjust a bent rudder on her model. Elena watched him, watched the ease in his movements, the way his big hands moved carefully for someone so used to damage. He didn't speak much, but every gesture carried weight. You think I could help with paint colors? Elena asked, stepping closer. Lily looked up, beamed, and handed her a brush. Only if you're okay with purple wings. Purple's aerodynamic, Elena said dryly. Lily giggled. Ryan just raised an eyebrow. Teamwork, he said under his breath. They worked quietly for a while. The three of them crowded around the little makeshift airfield. It was simple, unscripted, and something in it felt safer than any boardroom Elena had ever stood in. At lunch, she peeled carrots while Ryan grilled cheese sandwiches. They didn't talk about the plane. Not yet. But Ryan noticed the way her hands moved precise, but cautious. like she wasn't used to letting them linger. Later that evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Elena stayed behind in the kitchen. She washed dishes, slowly, methodically. Ryan joined her with a towel, drying without a word. "I used to be the COO of Vale Aerodyne," she said, eyes fixed on the soapy water. Ryan didn't answer right away. She continued, voice low. "I ran operations, oversaw production, smiled on camera, wrote speeches I didn't believe." He folded the towel and waited. Elena turned to him, her expression unreadable. There was a crash. "One of our test aircraft. The pilot didn't survive." Her throat tightened, but she pushed forward. "There was a design flaw. I knew about it. I tried to speak up, but they redirected the blame." Ryan watched her quietly. "Let me guess. You became the scapegoat." She laughed once. Bitter. "No. Worse. I became the face they used to cover it up." Silence filled the room, dense like fog. "I didn't fight hard enough," she whispered. "Didn't protect him, or the others." Ryan placed the towel on the counter. "I've worked under people like that," he said finally. "They count on good folks staying quiet." Elena looked at him, surprised not by what he said, but by how gently he said it. That night, long after midnight, Ryan woke to the creak of floorboards. He stepped into the hallway and found Elena standing by the window, barefoot, staring out into the snow. Her lips moved, barely audible. "I'm sorry," she murmured. He didn't disturb her. Just watched from the shadows, heart heavier than he cared to admit, because sometimes the deepest wounds left no scar at all. The next day, while organizing the front closet, Ryan found her jacket tucked behind a stack of boots. A map had slipped from the inner pocket. Worn creases marked half a dozen small airports across the Northwest. He studied it for a moment, then slid it back without a word. The markings weren't random. She hadn't been wandering. She'd been avoiding. That afternoon, at the general store in town, Ryan overheard something strange. A man asking questions, tall, sharp coat, sharper voice. Said he was looking for a woman named Vale. Said she might be flying under the radar. Ryan didn't react, didn't speak, but when he got home, he triple-locked the front door and made sure the radio in the kitchen stayed turned low. The mood in the house shifted slightly. Lily didn't notice, or maybe she did and chose not to say. Children had a way of sensing things adults thought they'd hidden. Elena grew quieter over the next few days. She still helped shovel the walkway, still stirred soup in the kitchen, but her eyes never stopped watching the snow fall, like it might reveal something. Once, Lily caught her standing in the hallway, staring at nothing. "You okay?" the girl asked. Elena blinked, startled, then smiled too quickly. "Just tired, sweetheart." But later that night, Ryan found her in the laundry room, sitting on the floor. Her hands covered her face. Her shoulders trembled, but no sound came out. He sat beside her, didn't say a word, didn't try to fix it, just waited. Eventually, she spoke. "I had a daughter once," she said, voice small. "I was 18, terrified. The father vanished the moment I told him." Ryan stayed quiet. "I left the baby at the steps of a church-run orphanage." She continued, "No name, no number. Just a note, telling them to love her better than I could." She took a breath that cracked in the middle. "I thought I could outrun it, build something bigger than my shame. But I see Lily, and all I feel is what I left behind." Ryan didn't speak right away. Then he said, "You didn't run away because you were weak. You ran because no one stayed long enough to tell you it was okay to stop." She looked at him then, and something in her eyes broke open. Not collapse, not surrender, but maybe the first step toward standing still. That weekend, Lily asked Elena if they could build a glider together. Not a model one they could fly from the hill behind the house. They spent hours in the barn, sawing wood, laughing over crooked cuts and paint stains. Ryan watched from a distance, arms crossed, a small smile tugging at the corners. He didn't say it out loud, but he saw it. Something was changing. At night, Elena no longer stared at the window. She read to Lily. She folded laundry. She stirred cocoa and burned the first batch of pancakes. And each time Ryan caught her humming under her breath, he pretended not to notice. But he did, because sometimes healing doesn't arrive with fanfare. Sometimes it shows up in cardboard wings and borrowed snow boots. And sometimes the quietest return is the one that matters most. The sky was clear the morning she left. No note on the kitchen table, no soft goodbye in the hallway, just a folded letter tucked into Ryan's toolbox and another placed gently on Lily's pillow. Ryan found it before breakfast. He didn't open it right away, just stood there, thumb brushing over the paper, a stillness settling into his bones. Lily noticed something was off when she came into the kitchen and found only her father. "No cocoa?" she asked, blinking. Ryan didn't look at her. "She's gone," he said. Lily stared. Gone where? Ryan shook his head. Later, when Lily unfolded her letter, she didn't cry. Not right away. She read it 3 times, lips moving with the words, then folded it back and whispered. She promised she'd stay. In her room, the paper plane still hung from the ceiling. The one with hope written in crayon spun slowly in the draft. Outside, the wind returned light this time, but colder somehow. Elena drove through the mountains in silence. She didn't listen to music, didn't check the radio. The snow thinned as she descended toward Oregon, but the weight in her chest did not. Each mile felt heavier, like her ribs were lined with lead. She kept her hands tight on the wheel, jaw clenched, eyes forward. Portland had changed. Taller buildings, brighter lights, but the same pulse. She parked 3 blocks away from a modest brick house with a white fence and waited. The file from the agency had given her the address. No guarantees, no promises, but it was enough to get her there. She sat in the rental car, watching the house. There was a bicycle leaning against the garage. A dog barked inside. Then the door opened. A woman in her 60s came out to get the mail. Behind her, a girl, not a girl, a young woman, maybe 21. Auburn hair pulled back into a bun, scrubs, a name badge, and a clipboard under one arm. She laughed at something on her phone. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. She wasn't ready for the sound of it. That laugh, it was bright, unburdened, and it shattered her. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Her daughter was real and standing just 50 feet away. But Elena didn't step out, didn't roll down the window, didn't wave. She watched until the girl disappeared inside. Then she started the engine and drove away without ever turning her head. That night, in a dim motel room off I-5, Elena curled into herself on the bed. She didn't cry. Not really. The tears had dried somewhere back in Willow Creek. She opened her laptop, typed open adoption reunion counseling, then deleted it. She typed again, can birth mothers contact after 2 decades? The results blurred. She shut the laptop and turned toward the window. The glass reflected her face older, tired, foreign. Behind it, the lights of Portland blinked like distant stars. She whispered to the dark, I'm sorry I didn't come back. And in her mind, the memory returned. 18, alone, a duffel bag and a hospital bracelet. The infant had been quiet, wrapped in a pale yellow blanket. She'd left her just before sunrise on the stone steps of the small church's orphanage wing. There'd been a note, 3 lines. Her name is yours to choose. Please give her a life better than I can. Tell her I loved her from the start. Then Elena had walked away and never turned around. Not once. Until now, back in Willow Creek. Ryan fixed the porch step, not because it needed fixing, but because idle hands made the heart too loud. He didn't tell Lily much, just that people leave sometimes, but not always for the reasons we think. Lily nodded like she understood more than he meant to say. Then came the phone call. It was from a man named George Linney, former systems engineer at Vail Aerodyne. He found Ryan through an old Air Force network. "I heard she was with you," the man said. "I needed you to know she wasn't the villain." Ryan's grip on the receiver tightened. George continued. "Elena tried to report the flaw in the design. Board silenced her. Threatened termination, legal action. She fought until they pushed her out. Ryan didn't speak. He didn't need to." George ended with a simple truth. She took the fall so they wouldn't. That night, Ryan sat at the kitchen table, pen in hand. He wasn't good with words, but he was good with truth. He wrote slowly, carefully. "Elena, you left like a storm, but you gave us sunlight before you did. Lily still looks at the sky, waiting. I think part of her believes you'll fly over any day now. You should know someone called. Said you were the only one who tried to stop what happened. That you tried to do the right thing, we already knew. If you ever come back, the attic room still has your blanket, and Lily still keeps a space for you in her sky house. You were never a guest here, just someone who hadn't landed yet." He folded the letter, slipped it into an envelope, and addressed it to the only contact he had, the P.O. box Elena left behind. Then he stepped outside, breathing in the crisp air. Snow had melted in patches, revealing brown earth and brave green shoots. Spring was trying. He looked up. The sky was open again, and for the first time in weeks, he didn't feel the cold. The road into Willow Creek hadn't changed. The ridgeline still held snow in its shadows, and the trees swayed with that same quiet patience. But for Elena, the town looked different now, like something she'd only just learned how to see. She pulled up to the familiar gravel driveway, engine idling. Smoke curled gently from the chimney. The barn door stood half open, like someone had been meaning to close it but got distracted by life. She stepped out slowly, boots crunching the dirt and ice. The morning air was crisp, but not punishing, just enough to remind her she was still breathing. She didn't knock at first, just stood on the porch, hands trembling slightly, letter from Ryan still folded in her coat pocket. Then the front door opened. Lily was the first to see her. The little girl dropped the notebook in her hands and ran full tilt across the porch. She didn't say a word, just crashed into Elena's arms like she'd been waiting at the runway for weeks. "You came back," Lily whispered. Elena knelt, clutching her tight. "I didn't know if I could," she said, voice thick, "but I needed to." Behind them, Ryan stood in the doorway. He didn't speak, just tilted his head and said, "There's hot coffee in the kitchen if you want some." Elena nodded and swallowing the lump in her throat. The house smelled exactly the same: cedar, cinnamon, and something that felt like memory. She hung her coat on the same hook she'd used before. They didn't talk much that day. No explanations, no apologies. Just three people making sandwiches, folding laundry, and letting the silence be soft instead of sharp. By the end of the week, she'd moved back into the attic room. Ryan had dusted it, but left everything else untouched. Even the small drawing Lily once made of a house with wings still hung by the window. The townspeople noticed her return. Some nodded politely. Some asked if she was staying this time. Elena never gave a clear answer. She didn't have one yet. But when the librarian invited her to lead a Saturday workshop on building model planes, she said yes. Then said yes again when the elementary school asked if she'd volunteer. By the third week, kids were calling her Miss Skyface without even knowing why. One afternoon, Lily walked into the community center holding a manila envelope. She handed it to Elena like it was made of glass. "This came for you," she said, "from Oregon." Inside was a note, neat handwriting, deliberate letters. "I read the book. Let's meet sometime. Maybe somewhere we can see the sky." Elena sat down hard on the folding chair behind her. She didn't speak, didn't move. She just let the words settle, warm and slow like sunlight after a long storm. That night, she told Ryan everything. The house, the girl, the bike leaning on the garage, how she never knocked. Ryan listened, arms crossed, face unreadable. When she finished, he said, "You should go." She opened a door. "That's not nothing." "But I'm afraid," Elena admitted, "of what that she won't like what she finds." Ryan walked over and touched her hand. "She will," he said quietly, "because what she'll find is truth." They didn't talk about it again. They didn't need to. Some things just live quietly in the space between two people. Weeks passed, then months. Spring painted the fields with color again, and Ryan started calling the airfield Sky House 2.0 after Lily's latest drawing. They repaired the hangar, repainted the fencing. Kids ran through the tall grass with paper gliders and kites, shrieking with joy. Elena stood often at the edge, watching, smiling in a way that felt less borrowed each day. One Sunday afternoon, she looked over at Ryan and said, "Let's get married here." He didn't blink. On the runway, he asked, "Where else?" He nodded once. "Long as we still serve chili and cornbread," they did. No flowers, no guest list longer than 20, just a folding archway, mason jars, and children with paper planes tucked into their jacket pockets. Lily wore sparkly shoes and acted as efficient for exactly 3 minutes before declaring, "You may now hug each other forever." When they kissed, dozens of paper planes sailed into the sky. Each one had "Welcome Home" scribbled in crayon across the wings. No one said it, but everyone felt it. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a landing. Later that night, when the last pie tin had been emptied and the music faded, Elena stood alone on the runway. Stars blinked above her. The wind was softer now. Ryan came up beside her, hands in his jacket. "You good?" he asked. She nodded, but didn't look at him. "I thought falling was the worst part," she said. "But maybe staying still is harder." Ryan smiled. "Then you're doing the hard part beautifully." A week later, another envelope arrived. No return address, just a single sentence. "Let's meet. Next Saturday. Ridgewood Cafe. 3 p.m. She stood in the hallway, holding it to her chest. Then looked over at Lily, who was stringing new planes from the ceiling. "You think she'll like me?" Elena asked. Lily didn't hesitate. "She'll love you. You're not just the girl who fell from the sky. You're the one who came back the next Saturday." Elena left early, hair pulled back, heart pounding, but this time she didn't pack to run. And back in Willow Creek, the attic window stayed open. A small plane sat on the sill, its wings painted purple and gold, and on its belly, in Lily's careful handwriting, was one word: home. In our darkest moments, kindness still finds a way, often in the quietest places. Not everyone who helps wants recognition. Some just need to know that today, someone isn't going hungry. And sometimes, that alone is enough to change a life. You may forget the story, but if no one retells it, history stays silent forever. Subscribe to Grateful Stories, where justice is honored, kindness is remembered, and no act of quiet heroism is ever lost.